everybody. It's Saturday night. Thanks so much for tuning in and for taking your time out of your Saturday night to join me here. It's going to be a hat night for me tonight because, it's Saturday and I just didn't feel like doing much with my hair or anything like that. But again, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. We are talking the latest in the Idaho Four case. Bryan Kohberger's trial starts in August. Jury selection starts in July. But the trial itself, opening statements, is scheduled for August 11th. And in anticipation of that, after all of the pretrial motions to suppress were denied suppress evidence were denied by Judge Hippler, we got a bunch of new motions in limine that were filed by both the prosecution and the defense. And they've contained a lot of interesting little nuggets and new information that we didn't know before. Some of it we kind of suspected, but and had heard about. Some of it's a surprise. Some of it's a surprise, but maybe not a big surprise. And I'll explain why I say that later. But anyway, like and subscribe, please. I really appreciate you joining me. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. It'll help my little channel here. Got a lot of headroom going on here tonight. Look at that. Somebody liked the Pope the other night. The Pope's here. I guess I didn't adjust my camera very well, but anyway. As I said, thanks again for joining me. So I came on here on Thursday night and I was all set to talk about all of this other stuff that came out in documents that were unsealed. And before I came on here, I was going to talk about this motion that the defense filed about DNA found under Maddie Mogen's fingernails, likelihood ratios regarding that, some testimony that was presented at grand jury that they don't want coming in at trial, or at least the likelihood ratios that were testified to at trial. I'll get to that in a minute. I was going to tell you guys all about this stuff about Bryan Kohberger's autism, about bushy eyebrows. I've got other stuff that I still haven't gotten to with you guys that I've discussed on my Law and Crime podcast, but just haven't gotten there yet because every time I come on here, I feel like I've got all these things I want to tell you about and talk about and get your feedback on, and then I've run out of time or whatever. So stuff happens, right? But I was going to talk about all the DNA stuff, bushy eyebrows, the autism. I was going to talk about all of that on Thursday. And literally, I'm like getting ready to do that, about half hour before I was going to come on here. And they put all this new stuff. Judge Hippler unsealed new stuff, and it got put on the website, the court website, regarding the 911 call that was placed at noon or so, 11:56 a.m. the morning of the murders. And then also the text messages between the surviving roommates, DM and BF. A lot of people use their names. I'm just like, I feel like these girls have been put through the ringer, and I'm just not so sure it really does any good for me to be throwing their names out there all over the place. They've been through a lot. I've got a lot of questions about what they did that night and what they didn't do, but you just can't judge people unless you've been in their shoes. Yeah. So Salty Sleuth Investigates says the Great Unsealing. Yes, I think we should call it that, the Great Unsealing. And you know what? I'm like, kudos to Judge Hippler, because in case you didn't join me the other night on Thursday night, I'm just going to tell you, Judge Hippler, and maybe I should just pull up what he filed, but he literally told I'm like, yes, thank you, Judge Hippler. And let me make sure I'm on the right microphone. I don't think I am. I'm worried I'm not. Hold on. You might be able to hear me a lot better now. Can you hear me better now? I hope. I'm on the right mic now. I forgot to check my mic. But yeah, so Judge Hippler and the Great Unsealing. Yeah, sorry guys. I knew I forgot to do something. I had to put the dog out. She was driving me crazy before I came on here. And I knew I forgot to check something. So the right mic is on. My great Shure mic. This is like Old Faithful here. The minute I say that, something's going to go wrong with it. So Murphy's Law of everything. Let me see if I can find this really quickly, what he filed, because I was like, yes, thank you. I mean, he's just like not having it. He's just not having it. I think, he's this huge case. His judge was like, okay, I'm done. I'm retiring, change of venue, like just get this all out of here. And it gets thrown in Judge Hippler's lap. And he's just like over it. So let's see if I can find because I didn't really talk about this in my podcast, but I can talk about it here because I have all the time in the world, right? I can talk about whatever I want and all of that. I'm looking for it, guys, because I was just chuckling when I read this. Sorry. Order. Here it is, guys. Here it is. Order regarding sealing or redacting filings. I found it. Because there's only a zillion things on this website. So let me share my screen. I'm going to love reading this to you and showing this to you because they're court documents. They're supposed to be public records. It'd be different if these were like juvenile court proceedings or, it's like a custody case or something like that involving children. That's not what this is. This is a homicide case. It's it's a trial. It's a high profile trial, which, yes, they moved it, change of venue, all that stuff. You have a larger jury pool now. And not everybody who's going to be in this jury pool is going to be out there looking at all of this stuff. People have lives. I say this all the time. I've sat through jury selection and voir dire in so many high-profile trials, so many high-profile cases. You would be shocked. I mean, yeah, of course, there are people who might try to get on the jury or want to be on the jury and have followed stuff. And I've seen people get caught fibbing during voir dire, like they've been tripped up. But not everybody is sitting around reading this stuff all of the time. People have lives, and not everybody, it's shocking to me, but not everybody watches the news, even though they have cell phones. Okay, sharing my screen. So here we go. And this was Judge Hippler, I think, just being kind of fed up. The party's pervasive practice of filing material under seal in this case has become the norm rather than the exception. Rather than seeking to redact discrete sensitive information, entire documents are filed under seal. In addition, much of the material the parties seek to seal is already in the public domain or is simply not confidential or sensitive. And he's got a footnote. Likewise, the parties seeking to seal a document that contains the entirety of the information sought to be sealed in the title of the document is an exercise in futility because the name of the document, which contains the sensitive information once filed, is on the publicly available register of actions. Yes, it is. Consequently, the court will, with scrutiny on requests to seal documents simply because, consequently, the court will look with scrutiny on requests to seal documents simply because they purportedly contain facts that are not public, but that nonetheless will likely come into evidence. So he's saying, knock it off. Okay, just knock it off. Redact your stuff. If there's somebody's name in there or whatever, but this is getting old, is what he's telling them. Knock it off. The Idaho Supreme Court adopted whatever this is, whatever rule, 32, to define when public access to judicial records may be denied, including through the redaction and sealing of court records. To warrant sealing or redaction, the material must meet specific criteria so as to allow the court to make the findings necessary to justify its decision to withdraw the material from the public purview. Moving forward, the court will require the parties to adhere closely to this rule and only seek to seal and/or redact material as provided thereunder. In addition, all proposed orders to seal or redact must specify the basis under ICAR 32I3 para A blah, 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 for which the sealing or redaction is warranted. A bare citation to the rule or conclusory summary without an individualized, rigorous factual and legal analysis of the basis for seeking to have documents sealed will result in a rejection of the request. Further, the parties must also seek the least restrictive method to protect information that should be or is exempt from disclosure. For example, despite the court's concerns being expressed previously, the state continues to seek broad orders sealing entire documents to protect the identity of individuals rather than simply using initials or requesting that a redacted version be made public that discloses only initials. Accordingly, the state's requests to seal filings writ whole are denied, except as otherwise noted regarding certain exhibits containing grand jury testimony or other exempt records. Rather, these filings have been redacted by the court to refer to certain individuals by initials or family members of the deceased victims by their nature of the relationship, e.g. brother, rather than by name. The original filing will be sealed and the redacted versions will be made public. In addition, the court has redacted portions of defendants' filings that contain grand jury testimony. So I really liked that court document. I don't know about you guys. What do you guys think about that? Harlan Oscara says, I like this judge. Yeah, we like him today, right? So we'll see what happens moving forward. But yeah, it's I found that very refreshing. And I was like, yes, because this is getting old. All of this, everything under seal. It's just absurd. And I think I think they should go back and unseal everything that's been filed. Obviously grand jury testimony, we would love to see it, but we're not going to get to see it. But hey, it would be great if we could have everything else unsealed that shouldn't have been sealed. That would be wonderful. Psychosaurus Rex says, hi, friends. I'm late, but happy Saturday. Finished some violence risk assessments and ready for a Saturday evening stream with Angenette to get a look through more docs of the Great Unsealing. I'm loving the Great Unsealing. I love that name. That's great. CH says pretrial motions hearings are the most important. Agreed. So looking, Michael asks, how's it going, Angenette? I think it's going well. It's been a decent Saturday. I'm freezing. I was like okay earlier and then went out for dinner and didn't really dress. Had this like sweatshirt on and probably should have worn a coat, but didn't. So obviously I didn't go somewhere where I had to really dress up because look what I wore a sweatshirt. So but who cares? It was just like, it was good. All right. So anyway, I'm really happy that this judge put his foot down and told everybody to knock it off with the sealing of court documents. Stefania says, what they are doing in pretrial, like a mini trial. Sorry, new to the U.S. court system. Oh, Stefania, where are you from? Please tell me. This is interesting. They're not doing, it's not like a mini trial. They've had some pretrial hearings where they argue, the defense has argued to have evidence suppressed, meaning thrown out of court. They're saying to the judge, look, you shouldn't allow this evidence in because the cops violated my client's rights, things of that nature. And the judge said, no, the cops didn't violate your client's rights. And this is why I say they didn't. And so all their requests to have that evidence suppressed, all of those requests have been denied. So now we're at the stage where both sides are filing motions, but the prosecution and the defense, about evidence that will come in at trial, and what they don't want allowed or do want allowed, that type of thing. So the docket says I'm digging the hat. Yeah. This is my Late Show with David Letterman hat from years ago. I forget what year I bought this, but I went to the show a couple of times. So yeah, I love this hat. It's super comfortable too. It's a good hat. It's a nice hat. So, okay, let's get to the other documents. I feel like I'm should go back and start trying to figure out where I should start. Sorry, I got my glasses adjusted today. I maybe we should start at, I've got a bunch of them pulled up here. This is one of my favorites. This is really short, so I'll do this first. I covered this on Crime Fix too, my podcast over on Law and Crime. So I'm going to pull this one up. This one's short and sweet, but I thought you guys would get a kick out of this. And when I say kick, I find nothing about this case funny. I have to say that. And I do want to say again, at this point, as the case moves toward trial, the focus is all on Bryan Kohberger because it's his trial. The state is seeking the death penalty against him. And so his attorneys are fighting, for him. They're representing him zealously, in my opinion. And, the victims, it's so sad. As I've told you many times, I look at that photo of those 4 young people, and it's just really, really, it's just so sad how they're frozen in time forever. So I do want to pull up their photo right now. I always call it the famous photo. So there they are, on what would be the last day of their lives. Obviously, they had no idea. And so, they have been not, I mean, for their families and friends, they have not been lost in this. They are the focus of their family and friends and many members of the public. But all you hear about right now, or, when we talk about this case, we hear about these motions, we hear about the DNA, and this is what happens in these cases. We hear about bushy eyebrows, we hear about all this stuff. So I just think we need to always take some time to remember them and remember their families and what has been lost. Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xander Carnodal, just having fun, going to a football game, and within hours after this photo was taken, they were gone. And somebody said, I always say for no reason at all. And I believe that. There is no reason for these young people to have been murdered. And somebody said in my comment section on one of the videos, something to the effect of, well, what do you mean? This was people, people have all these conspiracy theories about this case. And I'm sorry. No, they're gone for no reason at all. There is no reason for these young people to be dead. So I will just stand by that statement. But let's get to this motion. This one is really quick, short and sweet. And I was like, wow, okay. And I covered this, as I mentioned. So the defense motion in limine number 4, using the term psychopath or sociopath. Comes now Bryan Kohberger through his lawyers. I'm going to paraphrase. And they want a prohibition on the state from name calling. It makes you wonder where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Specifically, this motion seeks to bar the use of the terms psychopath and sociopath. I'm like, where is this coming from? Is Bill Thompson talking on the phone to Ann Taylor and saying your client's a psychopath, or are there some psychological records that say this? Like, I found this to be such a strange motion because I've never, maybe I've probably covered cases. I know I've covered cases. I think I mentioned the Anthony Kirkland case in Cincinnati, where this guy was a serial killer and he totally was a psychopath. I mean, no empathy, nothing. I mean, and he was a horrible person. Raped little girls, murdered them, just disgusting. He also murdered and raped some women. And he was a psychopath. But you don't usually hear prosecutors calling people psychopaths and sociopaths in their case in chief. But this made me kind of wonder, it really made me wonder, is there some psychological evaluation stuff out there, or something that labeled him a sociopath or a psychopath? I don't know, but where is this motion coming from? So I found that to be very interesting. CH says word banning in trial isn't new. No, I know that. Yeah, I know that. But this is like, where did this come from? This one specifically. There's another one too. They don't want the use of the word murder. Let's switch over to this one. And then we'll get to the ones that really have some meat on the bone and more of information. This other one, they don't want. Sorry, guys, I'm getting to it. I just had it pulled up. Here it is. They don't want, the defense does not want the words murder, murderer, murdered, murder weapon, and similar forms of the word murder applied to Bryan Kohberger during the trial of this matter. This motion is not seeking a prohibition on the use of the word murder or its varying forms in the charging document or jury instructions. Well, of course not, because he's charged with 4 counts of murder. Whether the killings at issue are murder as allegedly committed by Bryan Kohberger or by an alternate suspect or someone still unknown is the ultimate issue. Each side will present this very argument to the jury to label Mr. Kohberger as a murderer, the alleged weapon consistent with an empty sheath as a murder weapon, or to assert that any of the 4 decedents was murdered by Mr. Kohberger denies his right to a fair trial and the right to be presumed innocent. Okay, I'm sorry, but they were murdered. And there was a murder weapon. So I'll be interested to see what Judge Hippler does with this and how the state responds to it, because they will have to. So they don't want that. So Mr. Kohberger requests an order prohibiting lawyers and witnesses from using the words murder, murderer, murdered, murder weapon, as well as any derivative forms of the word murder. So what do you guys think of that? The docket says spaghetti motions. Salty Sleuth investigates. Ridiculous. Same thing with Stearns. Psychosaurus Rex says, I wonder if maybe not only a psych eval mentions psychopathy, but perhaps a lay witness has mentioned BK as being a psychopath, so they want to avoid uneducated lay speak. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's very possible. I would be interested to see. I would like to know where this is coming from with the sociopath psychopath motion. Stefania says, this is a murder case. Are they trolling the court by saying no murder word? I don't know. I think they're just zealously representing their client, but I feel like, I don't know if I've ever seen this one kind of, maybe I have, but maybe I don't remember, but I just was like, wow, that's something. Okay. Toy says, can we call him bushy-eyed psycho? No, you cannot, because they don't want that either. So I'll get to that. All right. So now let's move on to some of the more meaty motions. And mentioning bushy eyebrows, let's get to this one. I found this to be really interesting. And this revealed a lot of information about, hey, it's mom, Tayo Toys says. Okay, I'm sorry, I must have missed something. Let's get on to the eyebrows. So I covered this a little bit in my podcast the other day. So as you know, DM told the cops that the man she saw in all black walking through the house had a bushy eyebrow or bushy eyebrows. He was wearing a mask, but she could see these brows, these bushy eyebrows. And so this contains a lot of her statements, this motion. And it's pretty interesting. So here we go. The defense asserts that rules 403, 601, and 602 of the Idaho Rules of Evidence bar witness DM from using the words bushy eyebrows or identifying Mr. Kohberger in this manner. So, although she has never identified Mr. Kohberger, testimony by DM from the witness stand describing bushy eyebrows while Mr. Kohberger sits as the accused at trial will be as damning as her pointing to him and saying, he's the man that did this. I'm kind of like, really? I mean, what would it? I mean, are his eyebrows that bushy? I need to know if you guys think they're that bushy. I mean, I think Luigi Mangione has bushy eyebrows. They're very thick. When I was younger, before I actually started like waxing my eyebrows, which I probably did way too much because now they're a lot thinner. Maybe if I let them go, they'd be like, come back. I should actually show you guys a picture of when I was in like high school, early college. I had bushy eyebrows. I mean, Kohberger has full eyebrows. I don't know if I consider them bushy, but they don't want that terminology used. I'm going to see what you guys say about the bushy eyebrows. Stefania says it is bushy if you look at his older photos. Salty Sleuth says they aren't thin, maybe average. Yeah, I don't look at him and think, oh my God, he's got really bushy eyebrows. I just don't think that. But even when I saw his first picture, the Washington State University photo, and I've got that here somewhere. The one, oh gosh, did you guys ever see this picture? Oh, here, I got it pulled up, guys. Here, let's do this one. Let's bring up the one photo. This is his Washington State University student ID or whatever. It was on the website. When this was on the website the day he was arrested at Washington State University. Okay, so yes. Interesting. So these are definitely bushy eyebrows. Okay, so now I get it. All right. So this is Bryan Kohberger in 2022. This photo would have been from 2022. So his eyebrows in his Ada County mugshot definitely look a lot thinner. I don't know if he's been plucking. Let's pull that up. That seems like a stark difference to me. Here, pulling it up, guys. Sorry, I'm pulling up the. Oh no, I guess they are still pretty full. So Yeah, I guess they are still pretty full, but they look fuller to me on the picture I have pulled up for you guys right now. Okay, so look at this photo. This is 2022 when this would have been his Washington State University photo on their website. Now here's his mug shot at the Ada County Jail. I feel like they look a little thinner. Maybe I should probably figure out do like a side by side of these. See, these look a little thinner to me. Maybe not as full, not as bushy. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? So, what do you guys think, guys? So, I guess they are kind of bushy. They just seemed thinner to me. So, yeah. So now I guess, yeah, Salty Sleuth says they're about the same. So maybe they are about the same. I'd have to like maybe put them side by side, but they just still looked a little thinner to me. So maybe they are bushy. Maybe they are bushy eyebrows. Um, oh my God. Um, let's see. Tayo Toys says, "Do you think Anne plucks his eyebrows?" Well, apparently not, because I'm looking at these and they don't look like they've been plucked. Okay, so let's get back to the bushy eyebrows. I guess I was wrong. They looked I just didn't remember them. I thought they had looked a little thinner these days. Let's go here. Let's get back to the bushy eyebrow motion. So, yeah, they're really worried about the bushy eyebrows. I just think it's amazing that, and I remember from being outside the house on King Road, I'm trying to think of like where her bedroom was. Like if you look at the one, let's pull up this photo. Because she presumably would have been able to see. She presumably would have been able to see the person because of the lighting conditions in the house. I'm pulling up a picture of the house for you guys. Well, I was going to try to pull up a picture. Here, I'll just pull up from a link. I was going to upload a picture. So you know how there was that the good vibes sign, the neon sign in the house? All right. So we'll just use this picture on here as an example. So when I was there, this photo right here, or, right there, that window, there was this kind of green leafy wall hanging thing with the good vibes sign. And it was still on all those weeks later when I was there after the homicides had been committed. And so there would have been light shine, some sort of light throwing off light, even though it was dark that night or whatever. And so Dylan could have presumably, that could have been giving off enough light where DM could have seen these eyebrows, could have seen his face. I mean, she says she saw his face. So let's get back to the bushy eyebrows. I don't know if it's the hall. I mean, I don't know if it's the hall or if it's more like I don't know the exact area. There's like a a part of the stairs in or through that window. Um so thanks Stacy Ann for hitting like. So let's get back to this motion. Okay, so they're really worried about the bushy eyebrows. So they're talking about when considering whether identification by a witness is reliable, there has to be this balancing test, the opportunity of the witness to view the criminal at the time of the crime. I just told you about the good vibes sign, the lighting condition, the witness's degree of attention, the accuracy of the witness's prior description of the criminal, and 4, the level of certainty demonstrated at the identification, and 5, the length of time between the crime and the identification. Well, she never identified him, but she did talk about this whole bushy eyebrow thing. And we're going to get to that. They kind of lay out her statements here. The reliability of the witness identification is non-existent. DM is the only person alive who is known to have seen the intruder. She only saw the intruder briefly. Her recollection or lack thereof is filled with uncertainty, fuzziness, the influence of alcohol, dreaming, and sleepiness. She did not see the intruder well enough to describe him to a composite artist. After Mr. Kohberger was arrested, she did not recognize him from a photo. Relevant facts, bushy eyebrows. Interviews on November 13th, 2022. On November 13th, 2022, DM was inside the house when the murders occurred and saw a figure dressed in black, hereinafter intruder, when she peeked out of her bedroom door around 4 a.m. Shortly after seeing the intruder, she went downstairs to BF's room. The two girls fell asleep. Roughly 8 hours later, a 911 call was made from BF's phone at 11:56 a.m. More than 8 hours after seeing the intruder, DM was interviewed by law enforcement at the scene and at the police department. It was confusing to DM that the intruder looked at her, but did not come toward her or say anything. How terrifying. My God, can you imagine? When describing the intruder to Officer Nunez at the scene, she described the height, build, and clothing of the intruder. Her description did not mention eyebrows. When she called BF before going downstairs to BF's room, DM said that she was kind of in and out of it. I was really tired. Later, when she was interviewed at the police department, Detective Mowry inquired about facial features and asked DM if she knew what color the intruder's eyebrows were. So the defense is kind of suggesting that maybe the cops planted this in her mind. She did not know the color of the intruder's eyes or eyebrows. Everything was kind of blurry. Like, I don't fully remember it. During the Mowry interview, DM again mentioned that she was in and out of it because she was so tired. Number 2, pictures on November 13th, 2022. Law enforcement took pictures of DM's room on November 13th, 2022 and November 19th, 2022. On the walls in her room were many pictures of eyes with prominent eyebrows, many of which she had drawn. Some of the eyebrows are heavy, voluminous, puffy, or perhaps subjectively bushy. According to Detective Lake, he found artwork of human figures with an emphasis upon the eyes and eyebrows were pinned to corkboards. So the cops documented this. What do you guys think of that so far? I'm scrolling up to see your comments. Danny Astoria. Oh, David says DM was fixated on eyebrows. Danny Astoria says Ann Taylor, focusing on bushy eyebrows, is grasping at straws and throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks because they don't have much of a defense. More of arguments are on subjective topics. And then let's see. PKC says, I think they look lighter colored. Ada has better lighting than Leta, possibly. CH says, there is a stair down and a partial wall going back toward the back stairs. Yes, thank you. That's the word I was looking for, talking about the stairs that I couldn't think of. It is a partial wall with the stairs. And there is a virtual tour online. I should probably just pull that up, or like old photos from inside the house. I could probably pull that up and show it to you guys. But yeah, CH is right. There's a stair down and a partial wall going back toward the back stairs, which would occlude seeing him until he was at the step in front of her. Yes. Stefania says, my brother has a long neck top shirt. When he pulled it up, covering half of his face, I suddenly noticed his eyebrows. I never noticed his eyebrows before at all. Yeah, I mean, maybe if everything else is covered up, that's what you see. That's what stands out. Danny Astoria says, again, of course, DM couldn't recognize Bryan from photo lineup. His face was mostly covered. That's back up by her text with BF when she said he was wearing a ski mask type, even gave some police statements. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's no big deal. Like, I find it not a big deal at all that she couldn't identify him. Of course she couldn't identify him. He was wearing a mask. Yeah, like, I mean, whenever people say that. Psychosaurus Rex says, I think you're saying l'amazing, and just focuses on motions like this rather than reviewing discovery. She says there's no time for, nor thinking of how she could easily bring these points up on cross. Oh, Anne. Yeah, I mean, this is all really good stuff for cross-examination. It really, really is. Beyond Fire says, justice for Kohberger. He is innocent. Long Island Hillbilly says, Bo Bridges, he is not. Stacy Ann does not trust the roommates. Let's see. Beyond Fire says, it's alarming DM never mentioned eyebrows initially if it stood out to her. Dana Hodgson says, asking for lemons in jail and lighting his brows, and BK is now cutting them. How do you know that? Do you know that for a fact? That he's lightening his brows and that he's cutting his eyebrows? I mean, I would love to know if you know that for a fact. I mean, the lemons, are you saying to lighten them, like using lemon juice to do that? Harlot Oscara says, right. I didn't expect her to be able to identify him. Free Spirit, love the show and keep up the good work. I wonder what other juicy tidbits they have hidden. Stefania says, it's normal to not identify. Yeah, I'd be way more suspicious if they were like, oh yeah, we showed her a picture and she said that's the guy. I'd be like, how in the heck did you do that? Because you said he had a mask on, like a ski mask. So that would not make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Right. CH says many of these filings are to ensure there isn't a case for ineffective counsel. I can agree with you there. Oh, Dana says because in court they are lighter and shorter. Okay. All right. So let's get back to this motion and move on to the second, either the second or third police interview on November 17th. So on November 17th, 4 days later, DM was interviewed by Detective Gooch and indicated that she was really asleep and probably very drunk when she woke up around 4 a.m. on November 13th. Throughout the interview, DM expressed uncertainty about what she heard and saw and did not know if it was real or if it was a dream or if it was her mind playing with her. Just doesn't make sense. She described the intruder and told Detective Gooch that she recalls seeing his eyebrows, his bushy eyebrows, but she did not recall the color of the eyebrows. She did not remember the eyes or the mouth, just the eyebrows. When she saw the intruder, she thought that the intruder was about 3 feet away from her, but that could be off since she was still a little bit drunk. She did not think she could remember enough to give composite or for a composite artist. She could just recall the bushy eyebrows, but not the shape or color of them. In this interview, Detective Gooch asked if DM had anxiety, which led DM stating she had had a lot of lucid dreams of being kidnapped or chased. She indicated that she watched Criminal Minds and fell asleep to crime podcasts. These lucid dreams began in high school. Yikes. I used to watch Criminal Minds. There's some really scary episodes of Criminal Minds. Really, really scary episodes. Like, I remember quite a few where I was just like, why are they making this like this? This is terrifying. I mean, that was years ago. I don't really watch. I can't remember the last time I watched a network television TV show, like in prime time. I don't watch it anymore. It's kind of wild. Okay, guys. Do you want me to show you the picture inside the King Roadhouse? Or do you want me to wait and continue with this for a moment? Okay, I'll just continue with the bushy eyebrows for now and then show you the inside of the King Road house. So on December 1st of 2022, there was another interview with DM. On December 1st, half a month later, DM was interviewed again and described the intruder. She did not see his eyes, but she saw one eyebrow or two, but it was just like this bushy eyebrow. I could just see like an eyebrow, this bushy eyebrow. She did not remember the color or the shape of the eyebrow. She just remembered it being bushy. She did not remember if she saw one eyebrow or two. Throughout the interview, DM indicated that she had always had really bad dreams, lucid dreams and scary dreams. She did not know what parts of her recollections were dreams and what parts were real. When she woke up that morning, she did not fully understand what was a dream or not. Wow. I mean, can you imagine? Like, you wake up and you're like, because we now know she, at 10:20 something, she was texting Kaylee. Yet she's waking up and doesn't know what was a dream and what wasn't. But she's texting her. She's obviously too scared to go upstairs to see what's going on. We know that now from the text messages. In this interview, she indicated that she thought that the person she saw was a fireman. That's wild. Okay. Statement/affidavit to support arrest warrant. On December 29th, 2022, a statement submitted by law enforcement in support of the arrest warrant used descriptive information from DM's interview. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. Then she was interviewed. DM, they went back to her. This is when they show her the photo, or they ask her, she can't ID him. After the arrest of Mr. Kohberger, DM was interviewed by Detective Lake and Detective Tollison. When she learned that an arrest had been made, she found a mugshot of Mr. Kohberger online. When asked if Mr. Kohberger was the person that she saw in the house, she said she didn't know if he was the intruder. She knew that the intruder had looked at her because of the bushy eyebrow. So she's consistent in saying she saw this bushy eyebrow and that she knew that this person had looked at her, and that's why. All she remembered is some bushy eyebrow and all black and some sort of mask. And then she testified in front of the grand jury on May 15th. Subsequently, DM provided grand jury testimony and was questioned about what the intruder was wearing. She was again uncertain, and that testimony is attached but not quoted verbatim here. Reliability of witness identification. Opportunity to view. DM peeked out of her bedroom door 3 times after 4 a.m. on November 13th. The third time, she saw a figure dressed in black. At the scene, she described the intruder as, he was a little bit taller than me, and I couldn't really see much of him. But I'm almost positive he was wearing a full black outfit, and he had this mask that was just over his forehead. Okay, and over his mouth. Okay, so here we go. And he didn't say anything to me, like, at all. At the police department, her description of the intruder was similar. And then I open the door again and the guy is right there. And maybe he's my height, a few inches taller, like skinny athletic build. He has all black. He's wearing this mask that covers just his forehead. And here, and it goes like around, he was white. There were no lights on the stairs. DM was uncertain whether either the kitchen light or the bathroom light was on. The kitchen light might have been on, but the twinkle lights in the living room may have been on. So let's look at the living room. I'm going to see what you guys are saying about this. Looking to see what you guys are saying. The judge has allowed the vast majority of it to come in at trial, and Taylor is losing just about all of her motions thus far. Yeah, she is. And she's making a record. She's definitely making a record. Rebecca says, I think there will be a whole lot more evidence coming to light during the trial. CH says many of these filings are, I got that one already. I read that one already. I honestly believe they've got more evidence than we even ever know, or that we even know about. That's why Anne's grasping on every straw she can. Beyond Fire says BK's eyebrows never looked bushy to me. Psychosaurus Rex says, poof. I can't even say, I can't do that on cue. Poof. Puffoot. I can't do it on. If I just tried to say it like naturally, I could say it, but I can't say it when I'm quoting you. I fell asleep to that very same show and have lucid dreams for decades. That does not disqualify me from being able to recognize a pair of bushy eyebrows when I see them. I was watching a Scott Peterson documentary like a year ago, maybe I forget whenever that came out, and I fell asleep watching it and I had bad dreams. Never doing that again. Never watching something like that before bed again. It's not a crime scene photo, guys. I have the pictures of the actual here, I'll show this to you really quickly. And then I'll switch back to the bushy eyebrows to show you kind of the floor where they're talking about. Oh, I just clicked the wrong thing. Stefania asks, can you talk about visiting the crime scene? What it looks like in real life? I heard people say you can see everything through the windows. Yeah, I can talk about that. And you could see everything through the windows. And I'll kind of show that to you. I have some old videos too, but I'd have to get them off my phone. But I can definitely, I could actually show you a video of me visiting the crime scene. Okay, so here's the partial wall. And here are those stairs going down to the first floor. That window I showed you guys before, that's right here. So this is that living room area. And then right here, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think my bearings are off or anything like that. The twinkle lights, I'm pretty sure would have been in here. This is like that living room area. That green thing I talked about, that green leafy thing would have been on, I believe, this wall with the good vibes neon sign. And I remember when I was there, you could see through this window. And I thought, depending on from the angle you were kind of looking in from, you could see like red Solo cups on that railing of the partial wall. You know, it's a party house. Here's the kitchen with the sliding glass door. So this isn't like great. It's not like a virtual tour. It's just photos of the house. So here's that. And then you walk through here. So there's the kitchen, sliding glass door in the kitchen. He would have, like the intruder she saw would have walked this way through here toward the sliding glass door. It's one of the bathrooms. This would have been Kaylee's bedroom on the 3rd floor. This is, I believe, the 3rd floor. I'm trying to show you guys where DM's bedroom would have been. This is probably not the best way to do it because this is not a virtual tour. Oh, okay, here we go. Oh, so what I showed you before, there's that window. Okay. And then I'm pretty sure that this right here would be DM's room and the stairs going to the 3rd floor. So see that through there would be DM's room over here. Like DM's room, because this is that living room area. DM's room, and then toward the kitchen here, and then that stairwell over there going to the 3rd floor. But her room would have been here. And then Xana's room down that way. So I know there are some virtual tours online that people have made, or there might just be actual virtual tours. So I might be able to find one of those and pull it up for you. Rebecca asked, so the intruder definitely saw DM. And I don't know that. She said he looked right at her, but we don't know if the intruder definitely saw her, but she said he looked right at her. But who knows? We don't know what the intruder saw or didn't see. All right, so let's go back to the bushy eyebrows motion. I just wanted to show you kind of the layout a little bit of where her bedroom was. Xana's would have been down that hallway. But let's get back to the bushy eyebrows. Because that good vibe sign, I know that was plugged in because even when I was back there, that good vibe sign, I mean, that good vibe sign would have been right there by her bedroom, maybe throwing off some light. Okay. Degree of attention. DM acknowledged that her brain might have been fuzzy due to alcohol and sleepiness. When she saw the intruder, she stated she had been drinking alcohol just hours prior to peeking out her bedroom window door around 4 a.m. and seeing an intruder. She was intoxicated when she arrived around 1:15, 1:30. She was probably very drunk and tired when she saw the intruder. Accuracy of the description. When asked if she could see the intruder's face, she testified that I wouldn't say I fully remember their face, but I remember seeing his eyebrows. So at some point, I probably did see his face and don't remember it. During other interviews, she said he was wearing a mask. So this is kind of interesting. I wouldn't say I fully remember their face, but I remember seeing his eyebrows. So at some point, I probably did see his face and don't remember it. But at other times, she said that he was wearing a mask. So that's interesting. I mean, this is all stuff that is stuff that will come up on cross-examination. That's what this is for. I don't see the judge barring her from saying bushy eyebrows. This is what she has said like all along. So the defense, I don't think they're going to win this motion, but we'll see how DM does on cross. Number 4, level of certainty. During each interview, DM was uncertain. On December 30th, after the arrest of Mr. Kohberger, DM was interviewed by Detective Lake and Detective Tollison. When she learned that an arrest had been made, we already went over this. It's like they're restating this. When asked if Mr. Kohberger was the person she saw in the house, she did not know if he was the intruder. She knew that the man had looked at her because of the bushy eyebrow. I feel like they're just restating all this stuff. In her mind, DM thought that the intruder went out of the back sliding door, but she doesn't know if he actually went out the back door. The sliding back door was not visible from the doorway of DM's bedroom. Well, of course not. I mean, just she could probably see the person walking toward the kitchen, but you can't see the kitchen sliding glass door from her bedroom. I mean, there's no way. Time between event and identification. There is no identification. There's just a talk about a bushy eyebrow. At approximately 4 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, DM saw the intruder. More than 8 hours after seeing the intruder, DM provided a very limited and uncertain description of the intruder to two different officers. On November 17th, 4 days later, DM did not think she could sufficiently describe the intruder for a composite artist. On December 30th, after Mr. Kohberger's arrest, she couldn't recognize him from a photo. Further, by the time that she testifies at trial later this year, more than 3.5 years will have passed since the murders occurred on November 13th, 2022. Well, that's not true. I mean, it'll be nearly 3 years since trial, or since the homicides. It's been, at this point, like 2 years and 4 months or so. 5 months, 2 years, and it's been 2.5 years. So they got their math wrong on there. Understandable. That happens. So what do you guys think so far? Yeah, David's saying, well, they're saying he's the intruder. They're not saying it's Kohberger. They said he's innocent. David says, what happened to the visual snow? It's visual snow that he supposedly had. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're saying it's not, that it wasn't him at the house. So, and we don't really know much about the visual snow anymore. I mean, we've not heard more about that. Let's see. Salty Sleuth. You can see the kitchen, but a weird angle wall blocks the view of the slider. Yes, exactly. Like you can probably see like the cabinet, maybe those first cabinets or counter or whatever, but not the sliding glass door. Squeaky wheel. He was wearing a balaclava mask, something similar. The majority of his face was covered up. It's no surprise she couldn't do a positive ID after seeing his entire face. I agree. She said he was wearing a mask. Oh, Harlot Oscara, I don't know what you're referring to, but I would love to know what you're referring to. Yeah, I caught that too. I hope they don't know something we don't. Oh, you're talking about the visual snow. CH says, if these writings are his, if I remember correctly, there was also mention of changing diet, which helped relieve the symptoms. I wonder if that's why he became vegan. Okay. So, yeah, it's not going to be 3.5 years because it'll be 3 years since the homicides happened this November. So, yeah, they've just got their years wrong. Okay, so I don't think there's much else left in here. They're just basically saying she didn't know if she was dreaming. It's all about the bushy eyebrows. They're saying this court may exclude evidence related to bushy eyebrows if its probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of one or more of the following: unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, wasting time, or needlessly presenting cumulative evidence. So they want to bar DM from using the words bushy eyebrows to identify the intruder, and to exclude DM from identifying Mr. Kohberger based on bushy eyebrows. Well, unless something's changed. I mean, has she suddenly said now that she can ID him? But we don't know. So I don't know. I mean, they're definitely doing their job, but that's what she said. She didn't say it during her first police interview, but she did say it in subsequent interviews. Okay, Salty Sleuth says, according to BK's Tapatalk post, he was being treated for hypothyroidism, diet change. Rebecca Bruce, do you think that will happen, Angenette? Do I think that they'll bar DM from saying that? No, I don't. I think this is a question for the jury. It's going to be up to the jury to listen to DM's testimony and every other witness's testimony. She has repeatedly said this in police interviews and with the exception of the first one or two she gave, and at the grand jury testimony. And the judge is not going to say DM can't say that. It's going to be up to the defense to cross-examine her, and then the jury will decide how much weight to give her testimony. They can decide if she's credible or not. And I don't know this young woman, but she could come across, she and BF could come across as being very sympathetic. I mean, their friends were murdered. I still don't understand why, if BF is like, come down here now, run, you're scared. Yeah, I'm scared too. We're both scared. They like, call 911 if you're scared and some dude was in your house. Like, I don't get that. I still don't understand that, but I'm trying, I'm not judging them. They're college kids. They're probably freaked out, drunk, I am sure. And you're sleepy, you're under the influence of alcohol, you're intoxicated, it's the middle of the night. You're not likely thinking that something really, really awful has happened. I mean, but meanwhile, you are texting your friends. So it is somewhat confounding to me. But even if they had called, their friends were sadly dead. They would not have been, they wouldn't have been able to be, they wouldn't have been saved. It's just, the whole thing is horrible. The whole thing is just really awful. First Last says BF was used by Dylan to create an alibi. Yeah, I've seen all of these conspiracy theories about this. Okay. So let's move on now, guys. Heather Fitzgerald says the witness has her own artwork that prominent eye and eyebrow are featured on her bedroom walls, pinned to cork boards. Just so happens to be the physical description of the intruder. Yeah, the docket says the Aryan Brotherhood did it, right? I saw a post on Facebook this morning about that there are a lot of people saying a lot of things about this. Somebody's going to have to explain that to me a little more fully. Okay, guys, let's move on to autism spectrum disorder, or should we do DNA first? Should we do the DNA under Maddie's nails next, or should we talk about the wanting to strike the death penalty because of the Bryan Kohberger having autism? Which would you like me to discuss next? CH says the DNA. Okay. This motion is actually much shorter and to the point than the autism one. It's also a little more confusing because it talks about likelihood ratios and all this stuff, and it's redacted. So let's move on to the DNA. And this is all about Ann Taylor wanting to limit this stuff about inconclusive data, limit testimony from this DNA analyst about inconclusive data or whether or not the results of DNA testing were inconclusive. I'm looking at my eyebrows in this light. They look a little bushy. Like when I was much younger, I had very thick, full eyebrows. So I should show them to you all sometime, like a picture. You guys would you would not believe it. All right, here we go. You're funny at the docket. Let me go over to the DNA. Okay. So Bryan Kohberger, he wants an order limiting testimony about the statistical analysis. Okay, guys, we're going back to math class now. Statistical analysis of item Q13.1, fingernail scrapings. And these are fingernail scrapings that were performed on Maddie Mogen's left hand. Allowing such testimony would violate Mr. Kohberger's federal and state constitutional rights to a fair trial, due process, et cetera, et cetera. And this is why, they say. In grand jury testimony, Jade Miller testified as to the results of testing done on item Q13.1, a swab of the left fingernail clippings from Maddie Mogen. The data consisted of a 3-person mixture. So the DNA of 3 people was found under Maddie Mogen's left fingernail clippings. The statistic, the likelihood ratio, was calculated assuming that Maddie was a contributor to the DNA on her own fingernails. Miller testified that MM as followed, and we have a big black mark here, big redaction. The data from that sample was blank, redacted, as to Mr. Kohberger. Grand jury transcript at 365, 366. Miller, so it's funny, they redacted the word inconclusive, but then didn't redact it in the next sentence. Miller testified that inconclusive means that an analyst is, and I'm sure this sentence says, is not able to exclude or include him as a contributor. That's probably what that says. We all know what inconclusive is when we talk about DNA testing, because we cover trials and we know what they're talking about. So Miller went on to explain that the likelihood ratio for Mr. Kohberger was redacted. The use of misleading language, she's talking about this inconclusive, language, confuses and misleads the finder of fact and is barred by the rules 402 and 403. The erroneous admission of irrelevant and prejudicial evidence will offend due process when it renders a trial fundamentally unfair. Here, expanding beyond the language of the report would prejudice Mr. Kohberger in that it might allow the jury to infer that the inconclusive data would mean that he might be included. Likelihood ratios are different from traditional statistics that courts and juries are used to hearing and seeing. The likelihood ratio is a comparison of hypotheses. It is not a statement of identity or probability of identity. It simply asks the question, given the data, which hypotheses tested is more likely? For item Q13.1, both hypotheses tested for each individual assumed that Maddie Mogen's DNA was present. So when the lab generated a likelihood ratio laid out above, the hypotheses stated were MM, KG, and one unknown person, or one unknown unrelated person, versus MM and 2 unrelated persons. So I feel like this is like, I understand it, but it's a little confusing at the same time. The comparison was done for all of the individuals listed in report 7 and for Mr. Kohberger in report number 26. At the Idaho State Police Lab, any number greater than 100 is considered a conclusive result, indicating inclusion. Any number less than 0.01 is considered a conclusive result, indicating exclusion. Thus, if a likelihood ratio falls within the 0.01 to 100, The lab cannot draw any conclusions, and the data is reported as inconclusive. In her testimony, Miller did not provide a full context to the analysis. The lab reported a series of likelihood ratios for item 13.1, including a likelihood ratio of 0.399 for redacted, 0.485 for redacted, 0.204 for redacted, and 0.0233 for redacted. All of these individuals sit in the same shoes as Mr. Kohberger, namely that the likelihood ratio is exclusionary, but falls in the range of inconclusive. Of interest is that when a likelihood ratio was calculated for person's name redacted and then person's name redacted, thus Mr. Kohberger's inconclusive likelihood result is similar to almost every other person for whom a likelihood ratio was generated, and focusing on his inconclusive likelihood ratio would mislead the jury. In that it implies that the likelihood ratio means that Mr. Kohberger's DNA might be present in the sample. The court should exclude the testimony such as blah, blah, blah. We don't know what this says. More importantly, Mr. Kohberger has disclosed that through further independent laboratory testing, he is eliminated as a contributor to item 13.1. When Mr. Kohberger sought to overturn the grand jury indictment, he argued that Miller's testimony was inadmissible and misleading. The state argued that the testimony was presented to the grand jury as exculpatory and an effort to elicit favorable evidence for Mr. Kohberger. The independent lab testing conducted by the defense related to item 13.1 is indeed exculpatory. Mr. Kohberger is excluded, and the state should be precluded from misleading the jury in any way. So it's pretty interesting. So now they've got this Bicca Barlow on their team as co-counsel. And so this does sound very interesting, but it almost sounds like to me that this might be an issue for cross-examination as well. And if it is inconclusive as far as Bryan Kohberger goes, like the fingernail clippings, the DNA under Maddie's nails, I'm wondering, I was kind of like, well, she was out at a bar that night. She's with Maddie. She probably didn't come home from the bar and wash her hands and do everything you usually do before you go to bed or whatever. So she could have had a number of DNA profiles. Like, who knows what she was doing that night, talking to people, doing whatever. So who knows whose DNA was under her nails? And we certainly don't with all of these redactions, or whose DNA may or may not have been under her nails other than her own and possibly Kaylee's. But yeah, this whole inconclusive thing, I mean, that could be something for cross-examination as well. And now they have their own expert saying that he was excluded. So sounds like a big math game. Let's see what you guys are saying about this. CH says, personally, I have an issue the way probabilities are reported in court as they are so misleading. Yeah, Vic Star says, well, the knife sheath was definitely a match to BK. Yeah, I think I'd be a lot more worried about that than these fingernail clippings. Yeah, Melmax says undernails are a petri dish of stuff. Yeah, that's how I look at it. Exactly. They were out at a bar that night. I mean, gross. I mean, I wash my hands a lot, but who knows what's under I'm assuming my own DNA is under my nails. Go for it on fourth down says, I want an explanation from the Kohbergers as to why his sister was suspicious of him even before anyone in the public ever heard his name. Well, that's kind of like, that's like a rumor that's floated around out there. I think Dateline reported that maybe. So I don't know if we've ever like really heard that, but maybe we'll find out at trial. Yeah, so go for it on fourth down says, but still identified to 5 octillion to 1 match to BK. AT has never once denied it was BK's DNA. Yeah, but they're like, there's also another motion where they don't want there's all this talk about excluding something, like talk about touch DNA or something like that. I could pull that one up too. It's for the DNA supervisor at the crime lab. All right, guys, let's move on to autism spectrum disorder. I can pull up the touch DNA one really quick too. They want to exclude the IgG stuff at trial too. So I'm wondering if the state is planning to call, like, now that all this IgG stuff is out in the open, I'm wondering if the state is planning to tell the jury, this is how we identified him. Like, we had no idea who it was, so we did this, and who knows? All right, let's get to the autism spectrum disorder. Motion to strike. They want to strike the death penalty. They're saying Bryan Kohberger has autism spectrum disorder. I don't know why we're just hearing about this now. They should have brought it up a while ago, I think, but now they're saying he has autism spectrum disorder, and this means he shouldn't be eligible for the death penalty. I thought it was interesting the way they stated this. They want the court to strike the death penalty as a sentencing option in his case because Mr. Kohberger's autism spectrum disorder reduces his culpability. I thought that was an interesting choice of words. Excuse me. Negates the retributive and deterrent purposes of capital punishment and exposes him to the unacceptable risk that he will be wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death. In making this motion, Mr. Kohberger relies on his right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment, his right to due process, his right to a fair trial, his right to counsel, his right to present a defense, and his right to a reliable sentencing determination, and other rights safeguarded by the 5th, 6th, 8th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. Mr. Kohberger is aware of the deadline previously imposed by the court's scheduling order, but has good cause for filing this motion at this time. Super interesting. They know they've missed the deadline, but they're doing this again because I would like to know when this autism diagnosis came up. There's an affidavit of Dr. Cecil Reynolds. I'm assuming Dr. Reynolds examined Bryan Kohberger and evaluated him. So let's get down here to the meat of the matter. Because death is different, when the state announces its intention to seek the death penalty in a case, it imposes an extraordinary burden upon the court, the state, and defense counsel to ensure the fairness, accuracy, and reliability of the trial and any subsequent sentencing proceeding. I thought I read in here, and I searched the document and I couldn't find it, but I could have sworn I read in here that they said that he has an eating disorder, but I couldn't find it in the document when I searched the other day because I was reading this as soon as it posted. I'm getting to like where they talk about. Okay, here we go. People with autism spectrum disorder, including Mr. Kohberger, exhibit deficits in nearly all the same areas cited by the court, in concluding that it is unconstitutional for people with intellectual disabilities to be sentenced to death because such sentences are not proportional and cannot be reliably imposed. Indeed, the pervasive media coverage emphasizing symptoms of Mr. Kohberger's disability demonstrates that the very risks recognized by the court are already being realized to his prejudice. Accordingly, this court must strike death as a sentencing option in this case. So that's interesting. Like they later talk in this motion about body language analysis, about how he stares, how he kind of has a way that he stares and gazes, that it's an intense gaze. People with ASD exhibit impairments in nearly all of these areas. Let's see. Oh, so in prohibiting, sorry, I skipped a part. In prohibiting execution of people with intellectual disabilities, the U.S. Supreme Court identified several characteristics that make such defendants categorically less culpable than the average criminal. And this is according to the Atkins case. Because of their impairments, however, by definition, they have diminished capacities to understand and process information, to communicate, to abstract from mistakes and learn from experience, to engage in logical reasoning, to control impulses, and to understand the reaction of others. People with ASD exhibit impairments in nearly all of these areas. There are two primary diagnostic criteria for ASD. First, a person must display persistent deficits in social communication and interaction across multiple contexts as manifested by deficits in all three of the following areas: social emotional reciprocity, nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction, and developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. Second, a person must display restrictive, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities as manifested by at least two of the following: stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech, insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior. Highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus, and hyper or hyporeactivity to sensory input or unusual interests in sensory aspects of the environment. As a result of these deficits, offenders with autism spectrum disorder, oh, pardon me, my nose is itching, tend to lack theory of mind, especially empathy and the ability to see from other perspectives, the ability to appreciate the whole context, executive functioning required for planning and organization, appreciation for the consequences of one's actions, and the ability to generalize, learning from one situation to another. All right, guys, I'm getting down to the meat of it now. They're also saying he has they have to like explain things to him over and over. He has like a diminished ability to communicate. Mr. Kohberger exhibits slow verbal processing and weaknesses in certain areas of executive functioning, including cognitive flexibility and organizational approach. Dr. Orr observed that Mr. Kohberger tended to perceive information in a more piecemeal manner and was highly distractible. As a result of these impairments, people with ASD showed diminished adaptive functioning, much like people with intellectual disabilities, which is really interesting because, I mean, maybe he is on the autism spectrum. When I first read about this, I thought, oh, maybe he's got Asperger's because he is pursuing a PhD in criminology. I mean, so he would be on, I would assume, the higher functioning end of the autism spectrum. I think I mentioned last time I discussed this that I was a substitute teacher when I first graduated from college, and they stuck me in a class one time with kids who was like I think it was like the junior high level, I think, if I remember correctly. And there was a boy in there with autism and he was nonverbal. And I was like, I am not qualified to be subbing in this room. Like, it was very, like, I did have somebody assisting me, but still I'm like, I am not qualified for this. I'm a substitute teacher. Like, this is not cool. Like, he was the sweetest boy. I mean, so sweet, just a sweet boy. But that he was Bryan Kohberger can talk. We've seen him on traffic stops and stuff like that. So, I mean, granted, that's what we've seen of him, but he must be on the higher end of the spectrum. I'm going to look and see what you guys are saying so far. Harlot Oscara. He was a PhD student who lived on his own, had a job as a TA, and already held multiple degrees, including a master's. I don't think he qualifies for protection due to intellectual disability. Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to have a hearing on this, but I'm kind of like, all right, I'm where's the intellect? I need to see the intellectual disability. And I'm like, do you put him up on the stand without questioning him about this crime to gauge this intellectual disability? Armchair Rambo says, and we're going to assume this all applies to Bryan. Nonsense. First Last says, strange how Scott Green is so silent now. He wrote a book. LOL. Wake up, y'all. The university, cops, and state are grasping at straws. I did hear about that. I did hear about Scott Green writing a book. And I was like, why are you writing a book? Like, somebody told me about that over a year ago. And I'm like, he wrote a book? Like, why are you writing a book? I mean, there's a quadruple homicide and you're writing a book. Like, what is going on? Even AT said BK has odd behavior that lacks social cues. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he does. So let's go on. There's other stuff we need to get to in this motion. The Atkins court concluded that neither. Oh, sorry. So the Atkins case is all about, how you can't execute somebody who's intellectually disabled. I think we can all agree that would be wrong. So let me get to the meat of this. The stuff that they're saying applies to Bryan Kohberger. Executing people with ASD does not meaningfully satisfy the penological, hopefully I pronounced that right, or penological aims of retribution or deterrence. Accordingly, sentencing people with ASD to death violates the 8th Amendment. As awareness of ASD becomes more widespread, evolving standards of decency condemn execution of people with ASD. Okay, let's get to, they're talking about the DSM-5, how that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that has all of the different psychological disorders and things like that in it. Autism spectrum disorder replaced Asperger's syndrome and autistic disorder in the DSM-5. ASD specifically has been deemed relevant to defendants' interactions with law enforcement and ability to formulate criminal intent. Okay, guys, I'm going down to find, I forgot how long this motion was. I'm getting to the stuff about Bryan Kohberger. Because a lot of this is just about background about autism spectrum disorder. Mr. Kohberger displays extremely rigid thinking. And I think I might have, I don't know if I mispronounced this word the other day, but he displays extremely rigid thinking. He perseverates on specific topics, processes information on a piecemeal basis, struggles to plan ahead, and demonstrates little insight into his own behaviors and emotions. Even assuming Mr. Kohberger aims to be as helpful as possible in preparing the case, these mental deficiencies will invade every detail of that aid, from client relationship to fact investigation to mitigation investigation to pretrial motions to trial strategy. No matter how helpful Mr. Kohberger may wish to be, it is simply not possible for him to aid counsel in a way that someone without the deficits accompanying ASD would be able to do. This lack of ability is the precise concern articulated in Atkins. It's interesting they say he can't plan ahead because they're saying the state's basically saying this. I'm assuming the state is saying this was a premeditated crime, and they're saying he can't plan anything. Concerns about jurors' impressions of a defendant's remorse or lack thereof apply with equal force to persons afflicted with ASD as they do to those with intellectual disability. Demeanor is particularly important in capital trials when the defendant's life is at stake. Serious prejudice could result if the defendant's capacity to react and respond to the proceedings and to demonstrate remorse or compassion is inhibited. All right, I'm getting to the Mr. Kohberger's ASD manifests in many of these highly prejudicial but completely involuntary mannerisms. Dr. Orr observed that he subtly rocks his upper torso, especially while engaged in a cognitive task or listening to someone else, both of which are almost certain to occur during his trial. His range of facial expression is limited. His baseline affect is stoic, and his expressions are sometimes incongruent with what is happening around him. Mr. Kohberger also exhibits atypical eye contact, including an intense gaze, as discussed below. Mr. Kohberger's facial expressions, including his lack of affect and concentrated stare, are already being assigned sinister meaning by observers. Jurors begin assessing a case from the moment they step into the courtroom. In this case, where jurors will be forced to determine whether Mr. Kohberger will live or die. Mr. Kohberger himself is essentially a piece of evidence to be examined and evaluated. Every movement and every expression is subject to analysis due to his ASD. Mr. Kohberger simply cannot comport himself in a manner that aligns with societal expectations of normalcy. This creates an unconscionable risk that he will be executed because of his disability rather than his culpability. So, guys, what do you think of this so far? I'm going to look at your thoughts. Kohberger was articulate and present-minded regarding his physiological state in his forum posts, and didn't he win a speaking award? I don't remember if he won a speaking award. I don't recall. Everyone forgets the blood under the nails, the handrails, the gloves, and the latent footprint in front of the DM's door. Just concentrate on what Nancy Grace says of 9 skin cells on a knife sheath. Well, we talked about the blood on here a week or two ago on the handrail. Ann Taylor said it was a spot of blood. We also talked about the gloves that were found outside. We've talked about all of that. Warflare says he could come up with a survey about all aspects of committing a crime, so GTFO. Can't plan ahead, but can go to law school daily. Well, he wasn't in law school, but he was getting a PhD. David says, and yet he was a teaching associate. Yeah, he was a teaching assistant, but he got fired. Okay. CH says the shift to ASD from the DSM-4 to DSM-5 made the umbrella very the umbrella very large for autism spectrum disorder, such that those who are high functioning, those most would not see, are under the umbrella as nonverbal. Oh yeah, guys, I forgot to show you the 11-12 images. That was funny when Ann Taylor cherry picked the 11-12 images from the full video she received from the state. Yeah, I mean, wasn't there supposed to be like a turn down there at King Road too? Like some kind of turn? There has to be a better view of that. There has to be a better view of the white car. Even if they didn't ID it from the 1112 King Road video, there has to be a better view from those images that she put in that motion. Yeah, I thought there was a 3-point turn down there at King Road and that other road, like the road you come in like this, and then you turn like this to get onto King. I thought that there was a 3-point turn down there. There has to be a decent view. I was actually in Moscow in January of 2023. We have video of that camera. I had it in my podcast the other day. King and Queen Road, yeah. All right, so there's got to be a better view. I'm kind of skeptical about those images. Like the one looks just like a blur. All right, let's finish about Bryan and what she says about him. He's going to make a really horrible witness. We're never going to see him on the witness stand because she's basically, I mean, it's his decision, right? This is going to be his decision as to whether he testifies or not. But she's basically saying he would make a terrible witness. He would never be a good witness. And this is why. And here's what she says. Due to the deficits associated with ASD, a defendant like Mr. Kohberger is just as likely as someone with intellectual disability to make a poor witness. Mr. Kohberger's speech is awkward, both in its content and delivery. As Dr. Orr observed, his tone and cadence are abnormal. His interactions lack fluidity, and his language is often over-inclusive, disorganized, highly repetitive, and oddly formal. He is highly distracted by sounds or activity occurring around him, and he frequently looks from side to side to monitor his periphery. I have never noticed that when he's in court. I feel like he's like a statue when he's in court. I really do. But I'm also highly distracted by sounds or activity around me. Like I kind of need to like just, if I'm working on something, I just need to work on it and focus. When in the newsroom, newsrooms can be loud and busy places. I would just be trying to like sit at my desk and write my stuff. And I would often sit with my headphones on just to like tune stuff out. All right. He frequently shifts the topic back to himself, even when it is inappropriate. He uses abrupt, matter-of-fact phrases that would be considered rude. He carries on about topics in a circular manner and perseverates, I'm probably saying that wrong, about specific non-essential details. These symptoms of Mr. Kohberger's ASD will alienate him from the jury and significantly hamper his ability to make a persuasive showing of innocence or of mitigation. So she does not make it sound very like, yeah, she's saying he has autism, but she doesn't make it sound, she makes it sound like they've been talking to him and that he talks about himself, makes inappropriate comments, says stuff that's rude, but they're saying, well, it's because he has autism. But I mean, she doesn't make it sound very good. Like it makes it sound like they've talked to him and he like basically says weird stuff that he shouldn't be saying. That's what I'm getting. But she's saying it's all because he has autism. Getting to the other things that she said about him. She talks about the Mr. Kohberger's case and the media frenzy surrounding it. It's funny to me how she hated the media so much in the beginning. She probably still does. Wanted the gag order. Gotta have a gag order. Gotta have a gag order. And no cameras in the courtroom. We got to get these cameras out of here. The defense, the cameras. Oh, nobody was zooming in on your papers, defense. Nobody was looking at your papers. Nobody was doing that. Nobody was doing that. I had to fill out a declaration as a member of the media talking about why they shouldn't do a gag order or why they shouldn't keep the cameras out of the courtroom. I don't even remember what it was. Nobody was looking at your papers. Nobody's trying to hamper you. But then she wanted the cameras in when she realized some other defense attorney probably said to her, like, what are you doing? Like, you've got this huge case, and you got a gag order, and now you're saying, everybody's so biased and prejudiced against your client, and now you want to shut the cameras out? No. Like some very high profile defense attorney probably got in her ear and was like, "You're doing this all wrong." And then all of a sudden she wanted the camera. Oh, we got to have these hearings in public. But the public needs to hear this. Really. I mean, I'm glad she saw the light, but at the same time, like, come on. Hence the putting in the little 11-12 King Road pictures. That was just my little sarcastic tirade there for a second. Wasn't really a tirade, but some people might think it was a tirade. Let's see. Looking for more that's relevant to just Bryan Kohberger instead of all the U.S. Supreme Court says. We know the Supreme Court of the United States says that you cannot execute people who have an intellectual disability. As far as cameras in court go, Mark Garrigus, who represented Scott Peterson in his trial years ago, he didn't want the cameras in the courtroom. Then he realized he made a huge mistake. He said that he's told me this several times, that he wished he had not done that because he believed, this is his belief, that had cameras been in there, then maybe people would have seen what happened in the trial and felt differently about his client's guilt or innocence. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that the public being able to see what's going on is always a better thing than relying on people to, type things out in a news story or whatnot. Being able to log on and watch the trial is always a better thing than not being able to do so. I'm looking to see if I missed anything. Oh, this I thought was interesting too, given this case. They've said Ann Taylor has said there's no connection, zero connection between Bryan Kohberger and these victims. She references a New York Times article from 2023 in which it talked about Bryan Kohberger making females on campus feel uncomfortable, also not getting along with his colleagues and superiors at Washington State University. If true, these allegations can easily be explained by Mr. Kohberger's ASD, given their difficulty in interpreting social cues. People with ASD may misconstrue social niceties as romantic interest. I thought that was interesting. It is also no surprise that Mr. Kohberger came across as socially awkward, or that he struggled to adapt to professional norms. These impairments are hallmarks of his disability. Lack of facial expressions and abnormalities in eye contact and body language are so emblematic of ASD that they are explicitly listed in the diagnostic criteria for the disorder. But to the online commentators who have developed a cottage industry devoted to parsing Mr. Kohberger's every movement, these symptoms of his disability are sure signs of his guilt. It actually talks about a law and crime video in here too, and a New York Post article, body language analysis. In an environment so tainted by rampant and vitriolic conjecture, it is impossible for Mr. Kohberger to receive the individualized sentencing determination, including full and careful consideration of mitigation evidence, that the Constitution demands whenever the state seeks to extinguish a human life. All right, guys, so what do you think? Do you guys think that Bryan Kohberger has autism? CH asks, BK was banned from WSU when he was arrested. Do you have evidence that he was fired prior to that other than the person from Arkansas's letter? I'm pretty sure. I thought Washington State put out a letter, or not a letter, a statement saying that he had been fired. I thought that he got the letter or that they had fired him when he was home in Pennsylvania. First Last says, I haven't seen him speak beyond his being pulled over about the intersection, but I thought he was very respectful, in my opinion. Go for it on fourth down says, if all the evidence proved BK innocent, then why would AT try to suppress it all? Come on now. She did try to suppress all the evidence. You don't usually try to suppress evidence when it's helpful to your client. Barbara says, I think she knows he's guilty, but and Bryan's pushing her to do her job to save him. God knows all the truth. Well, I think she's just doing her job as a defense attorney. She's just zealously representing her client. Leah, Schmid says even prosecutor and MPD know that BK is innocent 100%. I'd be interested to know why you feel that way or say that. All right, guys, let's move on to the car. Stacy Ann says, I don't believe that he has autism. First Last says, I think Bryan Kohberger has anxiety. He very well may. A lot of people have anxiety. Warflare says, I heard that it was meant for those with low IQ, not high functioning, who definitely know what they're doing. Yeah, basically, I interviewed a forensic psychiatrist the other day, Dr. Daniel Bober, and he said there's a difference between intellectual disability and autism, basically. I might be paraphrasing. I might be misstating exactly how he said it, but he didn't make it sound like autism was going to get the death penalty stricken. Yeah, Beautiful Messy Ball says anxiety is a symptom of autism. Let's not forget Elon Musk has autism. Well, yeah, he has Asperger's syndrome, it's my understanding, which is under the autism spectrum disorder umbrella. Also, symptoms of ADHD and autism can sometimes mimic each other as well. I do know that for a fact. Okay, guys, let's move on to the car. This will be our last thing for tonight. And I'm going to pull up the video of the car. Or not the video, I'm sorry. The video of, where is it? Here we go. Of course, the ad comes up. Gotta love. All right, so let's get to the car, guys. So Ann Taylor does not want the FBI. She doesn't want the FBI referring to this car that you see here from the 1112 King Road camera as like the Hyundai Elantra or whatever. So she included 2 screen grabs from the surveillance video. And the 3-point turn would have been down here, I believe, right down there. And there's the white car making its way up. Ann Taylor says the FBI agent they call this suspect vehicle 1, but the FBI agent didn't make the identification of the white Hyundai Elantra from this camera, so they shouldn't be able to like say that's the white Hyundai Elantra. I mean, my question is, how many white cars are tooling around Moscow, Idaho at 3:56 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. on November 13th, 2022? Moscow is a small place. I mean, it's a college town. So how many white cars, and I showed you the Linda Lane footage the other night, how many white cars are running around Moscow at that time of night? But she's basically saying, she's suggesting there could be 2 different cars. And she did say in a recent hearing, let me play this for you really quick. She said in a hearing in January, listen to what she said. Okay, now you can listen to it.
The real story is exculpatory to Mr. Kohberger. He was not stationary around that house. He was never at that house. He did go to Moscow.
Bryan Kohberger's attorneys are gearing up for trial.
So she said he went to Moscow, but that he was not stationary around the house and he didn't go to the house. So here's the picture again. My editor, Daniel, he did this cool kind of contact sheet kind of shot with it. There it is, 3:56 a.m., the white car. But Ann Taylor said, the FBI agent made the white Hyundai Elantra identification from the Ridge Road camera, not the King Road camera. And this is 1112 King Road. This is the next door neighbor house to 1122 King Road. And so here's what, I actually have video of that camera. Here we go.
And at 4:20 a.m.
Here, we were there in January 2023, and we shot video of it. So there it is. There's that camera. You see the little pumpkins on the railing. So we have video of it. There's the camera. So I feel like there's got to be a better shot than the ones that she included there. And of course, the commercial pops up for you. So, yeah, I mean, that's another question for the jury. Is the FBI agent's testimony credible? And is that a Hyundai Elantra? And if so, is it Bryan Kohberger's Hyundai Elantra? That will be a question the jury will have to answer. I kind of want to play that soundbite from Ann Taylor, the full soundbite for you guys.
The white Hyundai Elantra at a hearing in January.
The way it's laid out would cause one to think that the vehicle's identified on the camera near the house, and that's not so. It's not identifiable. The state's expert said it's not identifiable from that particular video. It's piecing together the other videos that they come up with something.
What's the evidence that law enforcement relied on the Ridge Road footage to identify the vehicle?
What did they rely on?
What's the evidence that they relied on Ridge Road, which you say doesn't show anything? What's the evidence they relied on that to ID the vehicle?
They relied on the Ridge Road camera, and you can see that in the emails from IMO and the other law enforcement officers when they say they have Paradise Creek Road, and then they say we finally got a good one, and it produced to us is the 1125 Ridge Road footage and photograph, and that's the only one that you can make a positive ID on the car.
The world can be a really unpredictable and scary place, so having a great lawyer.
Okay, guys. So what do you think of that?
Beautiful Messy Ball says, like I said, I spent a good part of my life studying and working in the field. People still use it, but it's been removed from diagnostics. Oh, I think you're talking about autism. So Harlot Oscara asked, do you think she meant that night when she said he went to Moscow? I was thinking they'd previously said he was south and west of Moscow and never there that night. Yeah, I mean, I think we could interpret her statement a couple of different ways. I think we could interpret it a couple of different ways. I took it as she was saying he had been to Moscow, but they were talking about, in that instance, they were talking about that night. So she later says the phone data shows that he didn't do that, or he wasn't there, or he wasn't at that house or whatever. So let me see here. I'll play. I found her full soundbite talking about this. So let's do that again. Here we go, guys.
Exclude testimony.
The real story is exculpatory to Mr. Kohberger. He was not stationary around that house. He was never at that house. He did go to Moscow. He did drive around, but he wasn't over there. And the phone records absolutely show that.
So we'll see how the state responds and what.
So I took that as her meaning that night. I mean, that's the only night that matters. And they were talking about the car identification at that point in time in the hearing. So I'm looking at more of your comments. First Latz says, but bottom line, Dylan said she was asleep at 2 a.m., yet called an Uber driver at 2:10 and continued to text the only other living roommate beyond that without calling 911 until 12 p.m. the next day. Well, she did text the other roommates. I don't remember her saying she was asleep at 2 a.m., but she definitely texted the Uber driver at 2:10 and asked if he was driving that night. She did that, according to the state's motion. CH says, I think she was addressing the 12 times pinging off the cell tower. Maybe, but in that hearing, it was talk, and she could have been. But at that point in the hearing, they were talking about the probable cause affidavit and misstatements that she claimed were made, or misrepresentations, things of that nature. And they were talking about the car identification. I'm looking at all your comments here to see what I've missed. Somebody's commenting about an Elantra. During the Murdaugh trial, I was in South Carolina. And so that was February of 2023. And I had been in Moscow in like December and January of 2023. And I landed at the airport in, I think it was in Charleston. Yeah, it had to have been Charleston. And I go to the rental car counter, and they hand me the keys. They're like, okay, you get a black Hyundai Elantra. I was like, oh God, really? I was like, is this all you have? And they're like, yeah, that's all we've got. I'm like, ugh, I really didn't want to drive the Elantra. I was kind of, especially after we'd been talking about the Elantra for so long. And it was a black Hyundai Elantra. It was okay. I just was like, oh, really? You're giving me a Hyundai Elantra? I was like, thanks. I was there twice. I don't remember. I just, one trip I got a white Hyundai Elantra, another trip there was another car, but yeah, it was just like, I just didn't really want an Elantra. Let's see. So yeah, this image is interesting. I think obviously we're going to see a lot of surveillance footage of a white car at the trial. And I'm sure they're going to have different pieces. I mean, maybe they'll have a video piecing it together, because we know about the Linda Lane footage that shows a car kind of doing laps. And they're going to show, they'll show like how this was pieced together through different types of footage. And, the defense is like, well, they don't have like a continuous piece of footage of this car. And I'm like, well, of course they don't have a continuous piece of footage. I mean, maybe if you had like a bigger city that had cameras all over, you would have that. But it's almost like they're suggesting there were two white cars that night, or you can't be sure that's the same white car. Seems like that's where they're going with this. All right. So I think that's it for tonight, guys. There are other things I want to talk about. So maybe I will do that another time. But I always get on here and start going through everything, and it takes longer than I think it will. But thanks so much for coming on and tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe, please. I'd really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share, do all that really good stuff. And we'll do this again. We'll do this again, and I really enjoyed it. I'll try to like not do this next time, but it's Saturday night, right? I just try to chill out a little bit today. Yeah. So thanks again for coming on and hanging out with me. There's a ton more to talk about with this case. And so there's more that I still haven't gone over that we can go over another time. So we will do that. I'll try to find a decent virtual tour too to take you through the house. And I need to go through some of my old videos and show you around that property there, 1112 or 1122 King Road. But thanks again, everybody. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we'll do this again. Have a good night. Bye-bye.